The Scottish Government has already spent £230,000 of public cash on fighting the court case, and the First Minister is now considering whether to waste even more and challenge the ruling. Humza Yousaf refused to rule out splashing out more taxpayer cash on appealing his crushing court defeat over the Gender Reform Recognition Bill. Lady Haldane ruled that Scotland Secretary Alister Jack was right to use Section 35 to block the legislation from becoming law. The Scottish Government have spent £230,000 on the court case so far, and its UK counterparts have also been forced into spending more than £100,000, with suggestions that it will recover these after its decisive victory. The First Minister has 21 days to decide whether or not to appeal this. He can appeal this to the court's inner house and then to the UK Supreme Court, which would push the cost to the public purse higher still. He is mulling this over, as a refusal to do so could bring down the current administration, as it is a red line to the Scottish Greens. But Mr Yousaf faces the fact that gender reforms are an unpopular issue among voters, with a majority not wanting him to launch the initial court action in the first place. And he freely admitted that the legal action was not even about gender anymore, but to protect devolution. Taking to social media, he hit out at another loss for his government in the courts. He said, "Today's judgment confirms beyond doubt that devolution is fundamentally flawed. The court has confirmed that legislation passed by a majority in Holyrood can be struck down by Westminster. The only way to guarantee we get true self-government is through independence. This is a dark day for devolution. Sovereignty should lie with the people of Scotland, not a Westminster government we didn't vote for with the ability to overrule our laws. We, of course, respect the court's judgment and will take time to consider its findings." One of his biggest issues is that if he steps back from the court fight, it could lead to a breakdown of the bIock House agreement, which will mean the SNP will have to form a minority administration. Gender reform is a key tenet of this deal, and is why it was pushed through. Mr Yousaf is facing calls to completely drop the legislation and start again. Alba MSP Ash Regan said, "Hundreds of thousands of pounds have already been wasted, and it would be unimaginable for the Scottish Government to appeal this decision and then potentially proceed to asking the UK Supreme Court to overturn a decision of Scotland's highest court. I resigned from the government as I simply could not support legislation that is so ill thought out, opposed by women's groups across Scotland, and a fundamental risk to the safety of women and girls." Scottish Tory leader Douglas Ross said, "The SNP chose to turn an issue of women's safety into a constitutional grievance, wasting taxpayers' money on a self-serving and doomed court case. Humza Yousaf must listen to the court, and to the public, and ditch his government's gender self-ID bill." Scotland's Social Justice Secretary Shirley-Ann Somerville said, "We note the judgment and will consider its terms. Devolution is fundamentally flawed if the UK government is able to override the democratic wishes of the Scottish Parliament and veto our laws at the stroke of a pen." The Scottish Parliament passed this bill with a large majority, including members of all parties.